Okay. We're going live, and then I'm going to play the intro. It's about 2 minutes, and then we'll get going. Okay, we're live.
Freedom is not a monolithic, indivisible entity. It is not a word. You are free when you can do what you want to do without coercive interference. We are born educated and have lived all of our lives in a society which is psychotically out of touch with reality in many respects. Do not be so naive as to think that this total immersion in the surrounding near universally accepted fantasy world has left your unconscious mind untouched. We are born among sheep, raised by sheep, educated as by and for sheep, and before we knew better, some of it got through. The general population does not know what freedom is. The activities of the general population are not good indications of when and how you can be free and at what cost. An overall decrease in freedom for the general population does not necessarily mean a decrease in freedom for you unless your actions are essentially the same as those of the general population. You can't watch most people to determine when you are free. Most people will not take advantage of freedom. This has been true in the past and will continue to be true for quite some time into the future. Regardless of the opportunities, their lives will continue as usual. Don't be conceptually blinded by paying too much attention to the general populace. A rational person does not count upon gaining freedom at some vague time in the future by means of sweeping social changes or other means of which are beyond his control. Before you can decide how free you are and how to become freer, you have to determine what you want to do. What do you, not the general population, want to do? Freedom is not free. It would be nice if it were, but there are people willing to coerce. Making some freedom for yourself requires purposeful action. You must know what you want to be free to do, and you must organize your resources toward the end of creating that freedom for yourself.
Welcome to Toxic Airwaves. Oh, wrong one. Stoked about tonight. Got Skeef and Shane joining me tonight. How you guys doing?
Doing pretty good.
Hey, doing well. It's great to be here chatting with you guys.
Yeah, I'm stoked. That intro, I just cut up one of the videos that you did, just like point by point. Really liked it. But yeah, can you guys imagine living your life determining what freedom is based on looking at the general population around you right now?
Yeah, it'd be depressing. It would. I mean, it was depressing. I started I started my radio show back in 2015, and yeah, it was pretty unbearable back then. And I mean, it only greatly ramped up in the past couple of years. But yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. So Skeef, you're gonna grow your hair out long, I heard.
I am not. We were talking about that in the Telegram that I'm balding, and so I keep the buzz cut because if I grow it out too long, then I'm basically a walking restraining order waiting to happen. It does not look good. So
Nice.
gonna keep the buzz cut.
Good idea.
Had it for about a decade. Probably keep it for the rest of my life.
I go through this process of wanting to grow out my hair all the time and then decide that it's too much of a pain in the ass and then cut it. I go through that like every year in the wintertime. It's insanity. It's doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. But yeah. So who are you, Shane?
Yeah, so I guess to put it simply, I call myself a self-liberator. I've been focused on solutions to increase personal freedom since the end of 2015, and that's what I do is basically build. I've been building slowly but surely, as really resilient a lifestyle as possible. As I call them liberated lifestyles, where my time is my own. I don't have a 9 to 5 servile society job, as I would call it, as I would call it, and I've got a 22-acre homestead here in what I call the Free Republic of Pasnia. It's about an hour and a half northeast of St. Louis. I've got chickens, ducks, turkeys, goats, and lambs, and got some rabbits that we're getting ready to start breeding. But that's a little about me. And yeah, I do the Vonu podcast where we examine the freedom strategy known as Vonu from the 1960s. We covered the philosophy in season 1 back in 2017. Season 2 is the practice of Vonu, what Rayo actually talked about back in the 1960s and 70s in his books. And then where we currently are on season 3. Basically, building upon building upon and updating this freedom strategy, because as we were commenting a moment ago, Rayo saw the Sterile Society much like we do right now in the 1960s, and took drastic lifestyle made drastic lifestyle changes to avoid the coercion that he saw and the danger that he saw. So that's what we're doing in season 3. And then I guess the other thing I'll mention just momentarily is I founded Liberty Under Attack Publications. We're a solutions-focused publisher. We got about 20 or so books on our catalog right now, including Sedition, Subversion, and Sabotage, second book on strategy, #Agora, really good strategy guides, crypto agorist fiction, stuff like that. And if you're an author, looking for assistance publishing, we do that too. So that's I guess a little bit of an introduction.
Yeah, no, that's dope.
I'm super excited to hear about a lot more of this, because it's like something. There's Bitcoiners, I think in general, are pretty solution focused, but not nearly as much as we need to be. And so I think that just people in general, but especially like people in the Bitcoin space and that listen to the show, I think have a lot to learn in that area. That's certainly something I'm super interested in hearing a bunch more about.
Yeah, in the Bitcoin space for sure, we've seen a major shift over the past year towards regenerative agriculture, general self-sustainability, and kind of moving away from, the stupid like price goes up, big number good nonsense, which has been cool, because I think that's like what the Bitcoin journey is like I see Bitcoin as being the base layer of entering into that life of self-liberation. It's kind of like one of the base building blocks of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But yeah, let's get a few quick definitions. So what's Vonu and what's Pasnia?
So Vonu is an awkward contraction of the words voluntary, not vulnerable. And just briefly defined, it's a freedom strategy and philosophy with the goal with the individual practitioner. The goal is to become as invulnerable to the coercion of the state and the servile society as humanly possible. So that's both from public coercers, the state, and then also private coercers, just assholes who violate person and property because they exist, and they need to be defended against as well. So that's Vonu, and then Pasnia is like I said, it's a Free Republic of Pasnia. It's the acronym PAZ at the beginning is a permanent autonomous zone. So the idea here is I saw what was happening in 2020, and I got some lambs and goats. That was I was kind of I jumped to action. I got goats and lambs, which wasn't the worst idea. And I started getting towards that food self-sufficiency aspect, that sort of area. And I recalled Erwin S. Strauss wrote a book in the 1960s called How to Start Your Own Country, and he talked about a model country idea. And I was like, well, I built upon that, and basically the idea is that Pasnia is the first free country in existence right now, self-sufficient, permanent autonomous zones, where basically a parallel society, an alternative economy, not just food self-sufficiency, but I've already got someone in the network who's doing some more of the small industrial stuff. He's got a laser engraver. We're going to come out with Pasnia silver coins. So that's basically a parallel economy, the first free country in existence right now. So like here, where I am, it's Veritas, Pasnia, like I said, an hour and a half northeast of St. Louis. And then the others, we've got Roots Pasnia out in New York. There's one over in Germany, I think, somewhere. And then there's one up in Michigan too. So yeah, the idea is basically the coercion is definitely ramped up significantly in the servile society, and it's not so much like that. It's not, you can do some things and kind of go along. It's to the point where like if you break your arm and you go to the emergency room, like you might not be able to get in without cards and such, and that's untenable. So I've been working towards solutions for a while, and this is kind of the grandiose strategy is the homestead here, and then also building up this network, this vetted network, so that it's not just open to anybody, but it incorporates the principles of the second realm principles and security culture. So you have to be vetted to come out here. We have to know you personally, or we have to know someone. We both have to know someone that can vouch for your reputation, the fact that you forsworn the use of coercion. So yeah, it's the Free Republic of Pasnia. We've got a constitution, we've got a Declaration of Independence, and we had I guess it was 2020 in September. We had what I call the Rebirth of Freedom ceremony. We had 20 people out here to sign the Constitution and all that stuff. So it's very much a serious second realm network, but we're having fun while we're doing it. Yeah, that's I guess a short introduction to Pasnia, and if anyone wants more information, pasnia.com is the website for that. And we're always looking for individuals to join. We've got a Pasnia Seed Exchange on Telegram. We're going to have a lot of cool stuff like that, where we're actually, physical trade, amongst second realms among Pasnias. And there's a lot that we're building and working towards. And we are a Bitcoin preferred republic. We'll need some sort of digital currency, to go between Pasnias, and I'm definitely it's definitely Bitcoin for me, nothing else. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, we got Zorn in the chat. Zorn says, "Need more cowbell. You don't know me. #re." I'm not sure, but I should add cowbell to my soundboard for sure. But yeah, it's pretty cool. This is impressive stuff, because that's stuff that I think we all need to be focusing on right now, because like you said, it's pretty traumatic right now. Like if you break your arm, you might not be able to get it fixed, or even worse. Wild stuff right now. Yeah. We tend to shit on the Constitution on this show. Why did you guys sign a Constitution?
So no, I'm with you on that one. I think probably the U.S. Constitution is probably the most tyrannical documents ever penned. We've talked about it. I think it was even on LA Radio back in 2017 or thereabouts. But Benjamin Tucker had there's 4 constitutional monopolies, like eminent domain. There's I don't remember all 4 of them, but the Constitution is terrible in terms of personal freedom. The Articles of Confederation were better, but still we're talking about coercive governments. So yeah, and I guess that's another thing I should mention in terms of it's a model country, and it's culture jamming in a sense. So we have a constitution, but basically the only thing people agree to is that privacy is encouraged. We encourage use of pseudonyms, and then that you forsworn the use of coercion. Those are basically that you're committed to building a free future. Because if we don't take action now, then we gotta give people options, ways out of the servile society. So yeah, it's a good question, valid. I would say it's not a coercive government per se.
Yeah,
first one in history.
And I imagine it's more so a contract that people agree to that come to be a part of your entity.
And it's not even really a contract. It's just it's more of like a I guess it's more of a prop per se. There's not, people aren't agreeing to anything. They're just agreeing not to coerce people. That's basically, so it's very much a negative, negative rights oriented, non-legally binding document. Definitely not.
But if you don't coerce people, how do you build roads?
Well, that is a great question. And I actually foresaw this at some point. So back in April of this year, actually April of last year, getting my years mixed up, but on April 20th or April 10th of 2021, I established the Pasadena Department of Transportation. And in the very first Title 33, Chapter I, Subchapter A, Carriage by Pasadena Highway, Subchapter A, by the authority vested in absolutely no one, the Pasadena Department of Transportation is heretofore created. On this date of 20 April 2021, the first order of business is to ban the use of, transportation on, and construction of all paved roadways in the Free Republic, except for the exceptions listed in subchapter B below. Roads are an ancient relic of the first realm, and such backwards thinking will not be promoted or enabled in this pocket of freedom. So, yeah, that's what I think about roads.
They're for leftists. Roads suck.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah.
What's your proposed mode of travel?
Proposed mode of travel. Honestly, like, as of late, I've been thinking airships. I'm not sure how it will work out. I don't have one built yet, but I mean, airships, or I guess with 2020, there's now private plane outfits that'll accept Bitcoin. So I mean, private plane would probably be, other than car. Obviously, car is easiest, and I don't mind driving, but um, yeah, that's an answer.
Nice. Nice. That's dope. So yeah, kind of like looking at the insanity of this, past couple of years, because I think a lot of people have been woken up a little bit more. Where do you see us trending, and what is that like as the state becomes more violent and tyrannical? What does that mean for anarchists and people that are seeking self liberation?
I think, yeah, I mean, it's definitely, Ben Stone talked about in Sedition's Version Sabotage, that like once once the market demand for the state is gone, then like that's when it'll go away, or when people realize they don't need it. And I guess I don't expect the servile society to be saved, or the first realm. I mean, there's the way, I like the way Bill Cooper put it in the 1990s, that it's an open air mind control laboratory. A lot of people can't be, like, it's hard programming to break. The collectivist, that coercive programming. So I definitely don't expect the servile society to crumble, per se, but I do think that it's shaking, quite a few, for lack of a better way to put it, it's shaking a lot of people. I guess a number of people awake that were a lot closer. And I think this is probably, Rayo talked in the 1960s about, like, an alternative economy would be great, but like there's just not enough people. Like back in his day, he had he circulation for the Vonu zines and libertarian zines that he was, I guess, editor on. We're getting a few hundred individuals in circulation. But now I do think there's a real great possibility people are getting towards self sufficiency. They're realizing that health doesn't come from Babylon Pharmaceuticals. And people are looking for solutions. So I guess I'm really, I guess, blessed in a way that I got focused on solutions back in the end of 2015, because I've been kind of waiting for getting closer and closer to where I am now. But it took some time in 2020, just basically solidified what I'd already been kind of, I guess, intuitively going towards. So yeah, I think the servile society can't necessarily be saved, but there's definitely some, and I'd even go like there's the real human beings are being shaken awake, and they're looking for solutions. So I think it's in more of a micro sense. I think second realm network, alternative economies look really real positive, but yeah, there's the answer.
Nice.
Yeah. I think that definitely overlaps a lot with what we talk about, like, especially the idea of, it's like we're not trying to redeem and fix the existing system and all that kind of stuff. Like, we're not trying to, make banking better or any bullshit like that, but we're building entirely parallel societies and systems and things like that people are totally free to opt into or not. They can keep doing what they're doing too.
Yeah, we're not trying to make the roads better.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that is that's, Satoshi didn't go and, write a letter to his congressman. He put out the Bitcoin protocol, and he didn't ask for permission. He, she, they, whatever it is, didn't ask for permission. They just did it. And, that's, very much, the spirit of direct action. Don't ask for permission from those who falsely imagine themselves to be your rulers. Freedom's not granted. It's earned. So, yeah.
So,
yeah, I like that a lot. So yeah, you refer to like the general population as the servile society, and we just refer to them as fucking lemmings on the show.
Hey, I mean, it's not inaccurate. say that. Yeah, and the servile society was a term that Rayo called it. He also called it that society, which is a little nicer. There's also the first realm, which in psych realm terminology, the first realm is the state of servile society. They're synonymous terms, servile society and the first realm. But yeah, it's pretty accurate. Ever since I came across it, it's like, yeah, that's the perfect descriptor. It's just short and right to the point.
Yeah. No, I thought that was great. 100%. What do you think it takes for people to wake up out of this? This is something that we've kind of talked back and forth on.
What do I think it'll take? I mean, I think probably just more. It's who did I can't remember. There was we did a direct action series on Libertarian Attack Radio, and at the end of the interview, I asked each interviewee, like, what's the best strategy for restoring liberty? And I can't remember who was it. I can't remember the individual, but it's like I think it was Luciander Fien. Like, grow the state, because like how are more anarchists created? Well, because the state becomes so intolerable that they reject it. So I guess that's not a great answer. But I mean, I don't know. I've never really been in the business of trying to wake people up. I mean, I started LUA back in February of 2015, and I mean, I was an anti-political constitutionalist at the time, and I was pretty far out there anyway. As far as philosophy, but then I came across anarchism pretty soon after, got into Austrian economics, free market economics, and then really heavy into solutions. And yeah, I never minced my words. I went after like anti-libertarian, libertarian party, did a number of articles and episodes on that, because I think it's really cruel when people are sick of politics to give them a third party that has never accomplished anything. It's like a really shitty thing to do to like someone that is looking for solutions. So yeah, I mean, I've never really tried to wake people up or reach a lot of people. It's basically there are other podcasters that could do a better job of that. And I think my niche and what I what my life now is self-liberation, the action point. Once people get to that place where they're like, okay, yeah, the state is intolerable, I can't be a part of that society anymore, where are the solutions at? And it's like, here's 6 years of material, go start looking. There's like 1,000 solutions for you, and then some 20 something lifestyle changes. So yeah, it's a good question, a valid one, and I've never had an answer for it. I don't know if it's I guess, like I said a moment ago, like Bill Cooper called it the open air mind control laboratory in 1990, and it's only gotten worse with smartphones and just the collapsing of, I guess, anything outside of people are only on like the centralized social media platforms. They're not going to see like 95% of like what else is going on. So it takes people, like they have to get to that point and then start seeking. They have to start looking themselves. Yeah, it's not a great answer, but it's not a great answer, but I don't think you can reach a lot of folks. I think they'll find the information if they're looking for it.
Yeah. I mean, for what it's worth, I would 100% agree with that. Like, that's something we've talked about on the show a lot, is that it's like my working assumption is that the mob is, and I would define it as 80-90% of the population, maybe more, is, either totally incapable or totally unwilling to like engage with reality critically and, kind of take the kind of steps that we're talking about and be sovereign and be free and, not just Bitcoin, but outside of that. And so, yeah, I definitely, I try to concern myself with them as little as possible and focus on the people that are aligned with what we're interested in trying to do, for sure.
Yeah, and you think about it, I have sympathy for him now. I have sympathy for him too, because like some of the conclusions that you have to come to looking at servile society right now, mean that you have to reassess a lot of what you've been doing your entire life and what you've been, building and, what system you've been building. And I mean, I can't even, like people who are, 50, 60 years old who, about to retire, work their entire life for the system. And like what's transpiring now, it's like, yeah, it'd be a lot to come to terms with for sure. And like, and I guess that's where those very rare opportunities, like maybe enough people will start to actually critically examine, look in the mirror at like what are they putting their generative force of creation towards? What are they putting their energy into? Are they putting that into a system of coercion? Are they putting it into a system that they can or an unsystem, maybe even to put it a better way, like a second realm or voluntary society. So yeah, it's there's a lot of hurdles to overcome in that, and it's none of them easy. None of them easy. And I mean, obviously just you hope that people start to take, because I mean, that's what I kind of had this realization again today. Well, like I think some people aren't even some people aren't even really worried about like the so-called, what's so-called health emergency. But like this entire thing is just an excuse to like shirk responsibility, it seems. And that's unfortunate. But again, I hopefully there's other folks that are using it as an opportunity to start taking responsibility, and hopefully maybe that first step, getting their finances out of the big banks and those sorts of institutions, and put them into Bitcoin, or silver's fine too if you diversify all that good stuff, but not into shit coins, just other things. But yeah.
Silver is good for Bitcoin miner heat sinks. That's where it's at. Skeef, did you see Lurk's comment?
Yeah, treat them like treat. I was going to bring that up. So there's an idea we've talked about on here too, is just this idea. It originates with, I think, probably Michael Malice, maybe somebody else, but it's just basically this idea that like all these people that we're talking about, like what you would call members of the Servile Society, something like that, that they are as relevant to everything that we're doing as trees. And it's like, that's, to me, like that's the silver lining, is it's like, who's going to say, oh, we can't be free, we can't have this, we can't accomplish this because there's so many trees around. Like it makes no sense whatsoever. And the idea is it's logically the same to say, oh, there's this giant mob of, there's this unthinking mass, blah, blah, all these different terms, lemmings, whatever we want to call them. And it's like, oh, we can't have a free society because of them. And, the idea that we've talked about in here is that those are both equally incoherent, because it's like, a very, very small minority of any population is who sets the paradigm. And then it's like everybody else sort of falls into that, or they don't. And yeah, it's to me, it's incredibly empowering. And it's like, and I don't have, and like you're talking about earlier, like reaching these people, like I'm having these conversations all the time. Like if I think somebody's remotely receptive, like we're talking about, the most dangerous superstition, like we're talking about all these different ideas, we're talking about Bitcoin, because it's like I want as many people as possible to exit that nonsense and be just a little bit more free, for sure.
Right. And it's definitely, I mean, maybe what's transpiring is just making, I guess, the folks that have thought this way for a long time more vocal, or maybe there really are more folks. But I know last year there were like, so I've been doing this since February of 2015, and I knew nobody that was, talking about these things. Like I tried, like that's why I came out with the radio show with my given name, was because I was going to higher level indoctrination college, and I was hoping to find people locally. And it was pretty much all digital versus, or other than going to like the Midwest Peace and Liberty Fest every year, and then some other freedom festivals. But yeah, last year, within the span of like 2 weeks, I had like 3 or 4 really, really incredible conversations. Went down to the local spring, and this guy was, I went down there with an anarchist who was visiting, and we don't just like, we're nice to talk to people, but this old man was like, I'm getting closer to an anarchist. I'm pretty much an anarchist now. Like this stuff's getting out of control. And it's like, yeah, welcome aboard, buddy. or maybe he thought about that for a long time. And then there was an encounter at a grocery store. I was getting a few groceries, and this guy walked up to me, and it was like even beyond anarchy too, like into some of the I guess some of the I'll put it some of the liberation spirituality stuff that I've started to dig into on the Vonu podcast. This guy walked up to me and just started talking to me, and it was even, I guess, stuff even deeper than just anarchism. So like there have been some really interesting conversations as of late. So yeah, I'm with you. It's I don't know if it's just that more people being more vocal, or there's actually actually more folks coming around. Yeah.
And I'd be interested, what kind of intro do you usually give to like that idea of liberation spirituality, like that you had mentioned? I've heard about that from a few different angles, but yeah, I think probably a lot of people would be unfamiliar with that term.
Yeah, and that's just a term I pulled off the top of my head right there. But basically, it's so there's physical, there's mental, and then there's kind of the spiritual liberation angle. And I've been digging more into kind of the mental and the spiritual angle. And I guess the premise is that we live in an electric universe, and our thoughts and emotions are magnetic. So like I know early on, like if I was in a shitty attitude, I would attract shitty people, and I would attract shitty experiences. And I realized that when you even just like a neutral mood, you bring in a lot more, I guess, a lot more positive experiences and things. So that might be a bad way of putting it, but that's kind of the premise towards it. Then yeah, this similar, more, I guess, more physics and science discussions go along with it. And that's the angle that I got to that on, was looking for a cure to my so-called type 1 diabetes. And I got into like breathing. Breathing is something people do wrong, like on a daily basis. Like a lot of people are mouth breathers. You're supposed to breathe, like in through your nose. So I've been breathing wrong for like 26 years of my life. And I noticed that was a really, really major thing. And you look into like Eastern traditions, like Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine, and that's they knew the importance of just breathing, for example, like hold the chi or life force energy. And some of these are woo-woo kind of topics, but I've started to utilize them, and I've had success with them, and a lot of things are going really well, and it could be unrelated, of course, but still, improving my health, breathing has been a big improvement to my overall health, and my mental clarity, focus, and my drive to actually be able to achieve building the second realm. It's helping to make it a lot easier. I know I drank pretty heavily up until a few years ago, and while I got a lot of shit done, and just did a lot, I did two shows a week for some of that, and high level indoctrination. I had 9-to-5 job and all, but yeah, I've definitely noticed a big improvement. And I guess another way to put it is bringing my actions, my thoughts and my emotions in line with my principles, which are basically natural law, right? And yeah, I've noticed that the more I've done that, the more things have just worked out, and it takes a lot less fighting, a lot less effort, and yeah, I guess that's kind of just off the top of my head how I would explain.
Awesome.
Explain that avenue. And if people are interested, I did. There was a recent episode of the Vonu podcast was Spagyrix and the Sky Clock and Self Liberation, with a guy named Phoenix Aurelius. He's this really badass. Like he's an alchemist, so he makes a lot of like medicinal, like really powerful medicinal products of all styles. And he's very, very knowledgeable on health. Obviously, he does smithing, so he had like swords that he made in the background. He's just a badass dude. And he's very much into a lot of that sidereal astrology type stuff, and applies it to, it's called biodynamic farming. If you planting at certain times of the year, harvesting at certain times of the year, according to the Sky Clock, what's going on up there. It's scientifically demonstrable. It has been for like 100+ years. I mean, it's even in a lot of farmers almanacs, that sort of stuff, and that's what it's based on. So like there's a lot of like an overlapping of really interesting ideas, and I think that's one of the main problems with the Servile Society, is that it's so compartmentalized. People have like one specialty or one skill, when and I guess in my viewpoint, Yeah, a lot of these things, overlap so drastically. Like if you're trying to improve your gut health, you can relate that to the soil, improving the soil health. Same sort of, bacteria, microorganisms, all of that. So like it's all, it all ties in, even if it does sound, like a woo woo and kind of the spirituality type stuff. Like it's, I only utilize it if I can see demonstrable, evidence and results. And there's a lot of really, really incredible stuff out there that I wouldn't have, that the Survival Society turns you away from. I want you to be in fear. They want you to be busy, so busy you can't even think. They want you to be, intoxicated all the time, so you can't think. Again, like it's yeah. I guess that's I lost my train of thought, but that's the short introduction to it, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we can hang with woo woo. My girlfriend's a acupuncturist. She just hooked me up with some herbs. Because I'm a little bit sick, and then Skeef wears chacos, so we both like
true.
Right on. Okay.
We both like kirtan music.
Oh yeah, probably yeah. That came up randomly. Like when I'm working, some of the software developer by background. So when I'm working, probably 80-90% of the music I listen to is Hare Krishna music. So love those guys.
That's so funny. I listen to metal when I'm working.
Same metal.
Metal and classical music. They're like the same thing to me.
Lurk has a good comment too. He said, "I think one thing that's helped me this past year is finding your routine." This is my 2 cents. Like getting into a routine.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, the breathing.
Yeah, I can dig that.
The breathing aspect's super interesting. That isn't discussed. I used to work in drug rehabilitation. That's something that we taught quite a bit, was basic breathing practices, and there's some pretty good science to that as far as there's all these things that are like kind of common knowledge, like sitting all day in a chair gives you bad posture, eating like shit gives you type 2 diabetes and makes you fat, and yet they're just kind of like the common trends, and very few people seek to address them in a meaningful way. But once you get down, once you research a little bit, and like one of the things you said is like, it was kind of interesting, is the servile society wants us intoxicated and busy so that we can't think, and you can't really focus on things like that if you're, always kind of just going through the motions. So pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, I was very much kind of like the rational atheist kind of. That's who I was, 4 years ago or so. But I moved out here on the homestead, and it's in the middle of nowhere. It's just it's incredible. Like living out here, I was by myself here for a year, and it was still just incredible. And I'd been intentionally, reducing what I've been taking on, because I want to have time to think. Like I thought that was an important thing to be able to do at some point, was just have some time to think and relax, and I could do that. So yeah, I mean, I definitely credit that. I mean, as it takes, you think about 20 something years of programming, and going through government indoctrination camps and all of that, and all of the media that I consumed. There's a lot of and then also just too, like kind of getting into the woo-woo type topics too, just stuff that's bad habits and behaviors that have been passed down generationally, that like I picked up from my parents, that I'd never, just unconsciously, never realized that I was doing. So like you don't, like you would never notice that if you didn't have the time to like really unpack all that shit. So yeah, and then breathing, like and this lends more credibility to the scam that is Babylon Pharmaceuticals, but like high blood pressure drugs, like you can lower your blood pressure. Like you can control a lot of your, you can control quite a bit of your body with breathing. And it's just like that simple of a solution. It's crazy. It's crazy. But then again, like the solutions really aren't that complicated. It's, don't poison yourself and fix nutritional deficiencies, and you're probably going to be all right. And in terms of liberation, just I guess yeah, it's really not hard. Just one small step at a time. Like it doesn't have to be a lot of people think that like if they want to live on a sailboat, or if they want to have an off-grid homestead, it's not like you don't do anything, you don't not do anything. up until you get to that point, like you take step towards liberation every single day. And then you look back over the span of like 10 years and it's like, wow, 5 years ago, I didn't actually realize that I was making any progress. You know, you're going through the day to day, that kind of, you know, the day to day grind, and it doesn't seem like, you know, you're getting anywhere, but it's really just, you know, one thing at a time, one day at a time, and just try to cut your ties to the servile society as much as you can, and put you in a much, you know, much better position. And I think, you know, financial is really, really one of the most important. We started out season 2 of the Vonu podcast with it. And I mean, you look at the servile society now, like it's not necessarily, you know, government coercion. That's the problem here. It's a lot of the, obviously that's obviously plenty of the problem, but it's the fact that most people have one single source of income that they're totally dependent on. And if they lose that job, they can't provide for their family. They can't pay for a house. They can't live. So like whatever that job tells them that they need to do to be employed there, like they're probably going to go along with it, because what other choices do they have? Well, they have choices, but they just don't know of it. They don't know about them. So, or a lot of them don't. So, yeah, I mean, there's never a better time to work on that financial independence. And I mean, Bitcoin's pretty cheap now, right? It's cheaper than 100K Bitcoin.
Yeah. And that point about people's income is super, super crucial. I mean, that's something else we've talked about before. And it's like, you know, especially within the Bitcoin space, you know, it's like we all see this where it headed towards central bank digital currencies and like all this crazy stuff. And so it's like right now they have so much control because they control your income. You know, if you work for some big giant megacorp, they could say, take the vax, you know, do this, bend over, all that kind of stuff. And you're like, well, fuck, you know, if my kids want to go to school, you know, I need to do this, you know, whatever. And then it's like they, you know, without Bitcoin, they'll be able to ramp that up so much more with, okay, on top of that, we can also instantly and very easily freeze all of your funds. Or we can, you know, if we see a transaction go through, it's like, oh, you subscribed to, you know, to Shane's website, like that's a banned transaction. So now you have these implications or whatever. And it's just like all that monitoring, all that control. And, you know, it's one of the, honestly, that aspect of it is so much more important to me with Bitcoin, you know, than price or, you know, getting rich or whatever, is that technology, that tool for people to opt out at scale. Because it's like individuals can opt out today. You know, lots of individuals have. I know people that live off in the middle of nowhere in Arizona and, you know, haven't even looked at a tax return in 35 years. And so individuals absolutely can, but when we talk about doing it at scale, I think Bitcoin and things like that, and taking these steps, like having sovereignty over your food supply, like what you've done, like all those kinds of things, I think are just super, super crucial.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're about 40 minutes in. I think I should play the ads real quick. Let's see. Our first sponsor tonight is Dirtbags Bar, which is like the Garden of Eden of Tucson. Very rarely can you find a place full of such sick people ready to ruin their lives with poor relationship decisions. As you know, all poor relationship decisions should be made while heavily intoxicated. We know it's hard for you to find someone new after your third or fourth marriage. At Dirtbags Bar, you can find a rebound in no time. Meet your next ex-wife at Dirtbags Bar in Tucson, Arizona. Over the last 2 years, things have gotten really tough for our local businesses as inflation and lockdowns and all the other nonsense has hit them. Business owners are dealing with increased input costs, labor shortages, all sorts of other things that are making it incredibly difficult, and many business owners out there are wondering if they're even going to be able to keep their doors open. That is why I am glad to say we are partnering with Glassnode. There's absolutely no reason why your local business owner who's been dealing with tough economic times shouldn't become a god-level trader like Will Clemente or British Hodl. Instead of having to go to your favorite scam technical analysis YouTube channel to get a little bit of hopium, business owners can directly inject the hopium into their arm as they're looking at charts and drawing lines. They definitely won't get rich, but at least they'll have clout as they post the screenshots on Twitter. Make sure to use promo code Pure Hopium to get 5% off. Now let's get back to the show. No third sponsor tonight. I was feeling a little bit rushed. Had a busy weekend, but yeah.
Good. Those are good. One tiny little side note, relative of mine that has listened to the show before was in town this weekend. And at one point we're driving down Speedway and they go, "Hey, that's Dirtbag's Bar from the show." I said, "Yeah, it's a real place." We drove right by it.
Oh, it's a real place.
Yeah, it's the kind of inside joke is there's a Telegram group called Dirtbags that Tucson and I are both in, and a whole bunch of other people. And so I forget how exactly it started, but long story short, I had a friend in college who every single weekend he'd go to a frat party, and every single weekend he'd say, "All right, tonight's the night. Gonna meet my future ex-wife tonight." And so that became the tagline that we made up for our fake sponsor, which is Dirtbags Bars, where you can meet your future ex-wife.
Yeah. Other sponsors we've had on the show are Pfizer, the World Economic Forum,
my political re-education program, where we take politicians and we have them scrub toilets and all kinds of stuff like that. Yeah. Teach them about actually valuable skill set versus what they're used to.
Yeah. I think I got an idea for next week. It's going to be, sponsor will be like AA for politicians, but instead of talking about how much they drank, they'll just like brag about how many people they killed.
Yeah. That's something like kind of going back to you were talking about earlier about like, Satoshi didn't write a letter to his congressman. That's something that we encounter a lot is people that say it's like, oh, the way that we support liberty or advance Bitcoin or whatever is by getting nice words written on paper by sociopaths. And yeah, needless to say, we disagree with that perspective. And it's like Ted Cruz was a recent one. He had some series of comments that were positive towards Bitcoin mining. And so just tons and tons of people in the Bitcoin space were saying, "Oh, Ted Cruz is awesome. He's saying all this great stuff. Like, look, he's so nice. Like, this is great." And it's like, this guy's directly complicit in murdering children for being on the wrong side of an imaginary line. Like, this is not, like, this is not.
Isn't his wife Goldman Sachs too? Or is that a different? I think his wife's Goldman Sachs.
Yeah, I definitely don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised. Like, they're all just so fucked.
Yeah.
Free men don't simp.
Family.
Free men don't simp, and they definitely don't simp for politicians.
Yes.
But if you're a total cuck, go ahead, call your local politician. So yeah. Well, we've got a list to talk about. So I think so. The big topic of discussion is strike. So I'll kind of start on this, and I think you guys will jive with what I have to say about it. So, strike set up in Argentina, and I guess this may be a thing for them in El Salvador, but pretty much they can't partner with the banks in those countries, or specifically Argentina. And so what they're doing is they're using Tether on Ethereum to present a cash balance to the people holding it there. And I think that has to do with like some of the capital controls in Argentina and just compliance issues, which, people there don't want to hold the Argentinian peso. But, my thoughts on this. So like there's kind of an uproar around Tether and Ethereum, being integrated into Strike in some way. And all I've got to say about this is like, this is what you get from KYC's services. Like, I'm not going to like hate on Strike super hard, but anytime you go and you like, the point of Bitcoin is routing around this nonsense. It's around not putting your driver's license in to get access to services, not being subjected to surveillance. It's about none of that. And so, the whole uproar about it, it's just like, you have the ability to just completely route around it. Like, people in Argentina have always, since Bitcoin launched, have been able to receive Bitcoin, and they've been able to send it to anyone, anywhere in the world. And I get the argument for like fiat on and off ramps, but I'm just not a big fan of them anymore. Like, I'm kind of over it. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to look into this strike tether thing specifically, but yeah, it's they're always going to be compromised to a large extent, and it's like all of these, in my opinion, all of these companies are stopgap solutions in between, at best, in between now and when you can just buy shit on Lightning wherever you want, or whatever. Maybe something else. It'll be something other than Lightning, or maybe it'll be something with Lightning, or maybe it'll be a dozen different things. But it's like until the mechanisms are in place to exchange Bitcoin more widely, because it's very easy and very possible today. But it's like I go to, as I've talked about on here, I go to the farmers market at least once a week, and that's where I get as much of my groceries as humanly possible. And that world is still all cash, which is obviously better than credit cards for sure, because I'm assuming and hoping that they are careful about what information they disclose to the state regarding that transaction.
Yeah. I think like the playbook going into this year, like if for the people that are aware and actually give a shit about liberty and freedom, there's a war on cash. Cash is getting taken away, and they're trying to replace it with surveillance, and they're already surveilling us a shit ton. And so like the whole, I think it's time to like start taking non-KYC Bitcoin seriously. And, if you have the ability to be, to talk to people and like meet people and build trust, then you have the ability to buy Bitcoin. And if you have electricity in your house, you have the ability to mine Bitcoin. So, and if you have the ability to do anything productive, you have the ability to earn Bitcoin. So, yeah.
And I think
that's
like
what I was going to say. Yeah, earn it. It's the best way to get it, in my opinion.
Yeah. I was going to say like a textbook example of kind of how they sort of backdoor limits on these things is like you can look at, they always do these limits of, it's what there was the transaction of, they said we're not going to monitor any transactions below $10,000, but that rule was written in 1965 or whatever. Like something I could see them doing with cash is they'll say, hey, look, nobody needs more than $5,000 worth of cash. What are you, a drug dealer? No, you can't withdraw more than $5,000. It's illegal or whatever. And then just fucking inflate the shit out of everything like they are already, and watch that go down. And then it's like, well, I know we said it was 5,000, but it's actually 2,000, and inflation's been 20% a year for the last 3. It's like you can quickly see how they, they're like, no, we didn't outlaw cash. Like you can get cash, you can get thousands and thousands of dollars, and then, but it's like in reality, it's like a lot of, they've played similar games with like ammunition and, making it difficult to import and find supplies and blah, blah, blah. Like they can be very sneaky I think is my point.
Yeah, they definitely don't have, and this kind of goes back to like why it's stupid to lobby your politician. It's just they don't have your best interest in mind. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
they want to actively coerce you and enslave you, so fuck them.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because like the obviously you've seen over the past couple of years the CBDC stuff discussed, and obviously internet's freaking out about it, which makes sense. It's not a good thing, of course, but like I look at like the place where I work, half hour away from here. It's a small town, and they still use checks for fuck's sakes. So like they aren't going to be onboarded to a central bank digital currency unless it's by like swiping a debit card, which they already probably do. And really, like, does it have to be and that doesn't even necessarily like, it doesn't like the surveillance is already here, right? The surveillance, the control, it's, with the debit and the credit card. So, it's an additional step of control for sure, but like they've already had a lot of controls like that. And in the meantime, it's like I interviewed Smuggler right after, I guess it was pretty soon after, the so-called health emergency, and he was disappointed, and I'm probably going to badly paraphrase, but he was disappointed in a lot of libertarians, anarchists online who are freaking out, saying like this is terrible. It is, but like look at everything, like look at everything else. Like it's been bad for a long time. Like this isn't like that big of a stretch. So just business as usual for those for a lot of folks like myself and him. So. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, things are going digital, and you made a lot of good points about the war on cash. Definitely, but the second realm parallel economy. Bitcoin's obviously great, and they're barter's an incredible thing we need to get. I think needs to be used a lot more.
Yeah, that's good. And the point of it being bad for a long time is a huge point. Because I think a lot
the Federal Reserve has been here for like 109 years or
Yes.
however long time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
and it's like as recently as like I mean, Vietnam, Iraq, it's like just go all the way down, and it's like the income tax, like what they've done with income tax, with regulation, with all that's I co-sign everything you were saying, and it's just it's definitely a point of frustration is you have a lot of people, and I predominantly find them among like people who are roughly Trump supporters or something like that, is these people who they're like things just got bad, or it's a lot. I think it's very common in the general sort of conservative mindset is that there's been some fundamental shift in the last 5-10 years, but it's like even if they glorify the 1950s, they still think there was this fundamental shift. Like it was like everything was amazing and Leave It to Beaver, and now it sucks. So it went bad sometime in between then. It's like you're saying, it's like we had the Federal Reserve in 1913. Like we go back through the history.
Had a ratification of the 1787 Federal Constitution in 1787. That was a pretty bad moment for freedom.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, how far? Yeah, where do you want to go back? Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just amazing, like talking about, I would hope that everybody that listens to this show self-custodies, and I imagine that most people do, but just how much of a powerful tool that is, because, talking about how things have been bad for a while, the majority of people have all of their wealth stored and reliant on third-party intermediaries to hold it for them, whether it's their retirement or their checking banking account, and they didn't never take full custody of it, and just the level of vulnerability that leaves people in is unbelievable to me.
Yeah, and it's like that idea of obviously self-custody, and then on top of that, it's like having our wealth secured in cold storage, and and being outside of it's like, because they can like all these different entities can do all sorts of crazy games with like swinging the Bitcoin price and short selling and all this crazy stuff. And if a person can say no, most of my wealth is just sitting there and it's not going to move for a decade or two, and it's just parked, and so you want to do with this and that, create at the price 50% tomorrow, go for it. I'm playing, I know where this is going at the end of this decade, the end of next decade, and things like that. That's what I'm looking at. Whereas, what I think a huge attack vector with Bitcoin is all this collateralized stuff, is they want people to collateralize their Bitcoin to borrow dollars to buy whatever. And then, you've taken someone from a self-custodied sovereign Bitcoiner who controls their wealth to somebody who can have their wealth stolen from them by a margin call, or not even stolen, because it's a voluntary thing, but can lose their wealth, through a margin call and all this like banker bullshit. And it's, I mean, that on top of why would you go into Bitcoin and then go back to all this Goldman Sachs horse shit and bankers and trading and leverage, and it's like they're gonna fuck you. They've been doing this for thousands of years. This is their game. It's like until we self-custody and opt out, like they.
So you think it's a bad idea to go take out a massive loan from the bank, buy a Aston Martin, and then try and pay it off with all the Bitcoin that you put in BlockFi? The interest.
I hold this really, really wild, crazy idea that Bitcoin should be secured with free and open source software, not banks. So I know that's pretty contentious.
Yeah. Thanks.
I guess I'll mention real briefly, and self custody, obviously, yeah, for sure. But I would say this just in case there's a listener out there that forgot they existed, because I did for a couple of years. I will admit my fault. But I forgot about Bitcoin paper wallets. So I gave one to my dad for Christmas, and he thought it was the coolest thing because I got him a hardware wallet a couple of years ago, and like it was just too complex. He wasn't gonna ever pick that up. But just to give someone an introduction to that, like get an introduction to the Bitcoin network with that, I think it's a way to get people in. And one that I forgot about, so maybe some of your listeners did too. I don't know how much money you'd want to put on there, but I guess that's up to the individual per se.
Yeah. Personally, I would say like a checking account level of Bitcoin. I think you could do it because it's essentially a bearer asset, a paper wallet. Whoever has that has access to the Bitcoin. But yeah, there's if a person has a smartphone, blue wallet, green wallet, there's a lot of apps that they can download. If a person doesn't have a smartphone and they just do a desktop computer, there's great, there's Wasabi is my favorite desktop wallet, things like that. There's a lot of good options.
Hey, you could be someone's proxy merchant, and they need to buy Bitcoin. You could just dish them Bitcoin paper wallets. So if they're not technical at all, it's an interesting idea. I hadn't thought of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's really good.
There's a tool called OpenDime from a company called CoinKite. Also, it's essentially a USB stick, and it's similar concept.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that's like a big responsibility, and it's something I've said, I think the last couple of weeks is like, when people come to the meetups or somebody asks me about Bitcoin, I want to sit down with them and explain to them how it works and then show them right there. Like, do you want to access non-KYC Bitcoin and to explain that before I explain signing up for an exchange like Strike? Because like kind of going back to Strike, like everybody likes to hate on Coinbase and how shitty they are. And they are pretty shitty because they partner with the feds and actively, take a role in that. But every intermediary, like gatekeeping institution that is an exchange is essentially deputized by the state because they have to report and they have to do this stuff. So they're kind of in the same camp as Coinbase, in my opinion. Yeah. But okay, happy MLK Day today, guys.
Happy MLK Day.
I was happy to see a lot of Malcolm X quotes today. Did you guys notice that?
I'm currently locked out of my Twitter on purpose, so I have not been on Twitter for a little while.
Nice.
I think I saw a few. Yeah.
Yeah. I made sure to tweet at our mayor. It's always funny to see a politician try and use MLK for clout when the state killed him.
One thing I did see is the FBI tweeted about Happy MLK Day or whatever, and just got absolutely ratioed by some guy. I wish I could remember. I've got the link somewhere, but it's like some guy who just made a joke about how it's kind of weird how the murderer is celebrating the victim or something like that, but had a witty way of phrasing it. Just got absolutely ratioed. It was awesome.
Did they delete that tweet? Because I saw a funny tweet making fun of the FBI. Oh yeah, they did tweet about it. I saw a fake tweet that really cracked me up. It was from the FBI. It said, "Just because we killed MLK doesn't mean we can't miss him." I thought that was pretty good. I tweeted that at our lovely mayor too.
And that goes back to the point earlier. Is it's like, what were these glory days? Was it back when the FBI was assassinating civil rights activists? Was it like what? Where's this beautiful time that you guys supposedly miss? It's just so many examples that it's silly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is the idea of statism, at its core is they're so detached from reality and they're okay with violence as long as it's perpetrated against somebody else and not their group. So you look at the conservatives today, and they've had a long stretch where they've not been persecuted, the FBI and the CIA was going after the leftists in the 60s and 70s, and then they went after the Muslims, and then, you know, and the conservatives cheered that on, like, yeah, let's support the Patriot Act, and then it's just such a detachment from reality. And this is like, you know, it's baffling to me to watch these people get up in arms because they're like, somebody's trying to force a shot in my arm, and it's like that's the point where you think there's a problem, whereas, you know, the state committing genocides against people, it's not problematic, and, you know, you support it. It's like, come on.
Well, and it's like, how many people can we opt out just by living free, just by living how Shane's living, just how we're living, like all these different things. It's like how many, you know, I guess, I don't know, yeah, but I've had conversations with people without, you know, they'll bring up some, you know, XYZ terrible political issue. You know, I don't like, so like one example that we use on this, I use on the show a lot, is it's like my kids are homeschooled. And so, you know, I have no idea what the local school board is up to. Maybe they're doing critical race stuff. Maybe they're not. I don't know. I have no idea. I have no reason to care because it doesn't impact my life whatsoever. And so it's like, that's, as much as possible, that's the approach that I want to take to the state is, you know, I'm not trying to, you know, start any fires, burn a building down, anything like that. I just want to opt out in every way I possibly can. And I just, you know, I want my kids educated at home so that they're not, you know, having, you know, out in some Soviet indoctrination camp, you know, et cetera, et cetera. You know, I want to use Bitcoin to get as much of my financial life as possible out of their grasp. Like that's, you know, and I think we can introduce people to that. You know, they'll say, oh, like, this obviously terrible thing, and just respond with, yeah, I mean, is it terrible? I don't know. I haven't been following it. It doesn't really impact me. So I don't know what's going on. But I think it's a pretty powerful thing.
Yeah, that's big, man. Nice on homeschooling your children. It's awesome.
Yeah. We've got a saying on this show that we stole from one of our good friends, Optimist. And we say you can't complain if you vote. You only have the right to complain if you don't vote. You got any thoughts on that, Shane?
Oh, I've heard, I've heard, definitely heard that before. I don't know. My opinion's obviously just that, you know, I think whatever you put your energy and, you know, generative force of creation into is your responsibility. So, I mean, that's, I don't know. That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. But yeah, it's I can't remember. It was one of the recent big, you know, bludgy shootings, the police shootings. And I was talking, a family member walked up to me and was like, "Oh, did you hear that so and so got off or whatever it was?" And I was like, "I don't pay attention to the circuit stat. I don't pay attention to it." So yeah, it's obviously like things are since 2020, things have definitely escalated in the surveillance society. But like, it's like I've said numerous times on podcasts, like I couldn't tell there's anything going on. Like there's a little more, like there's more, you know, hyper compliance, you know, status or like doing more. They're wearing masks around now. So like, it's not really anything different. It's just like, more compliance. What else would I expect? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think oh, go ahead.
I was going to say they've become easier to identify for sure. They've got the uniform.
I definitely pay attention to the circus too much.
I was telling someone about this recently. Like so I've never not never. Like there's a period of time like I got a physical newspaper subscription and things like that. But like for quite a while, I have, you know, I haven't had a TV in my house since I was 18 years old, that kind of stuff. But it's like one downside so there's tons of upsides. Like I'm very intentional about what I focus on, those kind of things. But it's like one downside is like I don't get as much exposure. And so it's like I was telling somebody recently, like with the Bitcoin bull run, I actually had no idea the 2017 bull run even happened. I was so like, I had played with Bitcoin in 2012 and then I didn't do shit with it for a very, very long time. And so it's like I didn't even think the word Bitcoin for years and years and years. And so I came in, I read the Bitcoin standard, this kind of, all this different stuff. And then, I'm reading about it, I'm looking at the chart and I'm like, oh, I guess the price was higher recently. Interesting. Like I was so out of it. So so I'll find stuff randomly where it's like people, like stuff that I should know about or whatever. And I just have no idea. I've never encountered it. Happens with movies all the time.
So the way that I look at it, I still like I got off. I used to be that I get all my news from Fascist Book when I was on there, but I haven't been on there for a few years. But like now, like if there's anything that I need to know about, like I'll see it on Twitter like 1,000 times probably, and then like someone will post about it in the Pasnia Committee of Correspondence group or something. Like it'll come across one of my one of the channels that I'm looking at, that I follow. So. But yeah, not being directly, I've said it a number of times over the past year, but I don't voluntarily submit myself to propaganda anymore. It's after a few years back, it's coming up on 3 years since I canceled my Netflix subscription, and basically just podcasts, books, videos, like all that, or just relaxing here at the wilderness of Pasnia, but yeah, I don't subject myself to propaganda anymore if I don't have to. Like, why would I? Like, why would I?
I really like that. Here's probably one of the favorite comments I've ever gotten in chat. So, Zorn says, my son made some money shoveling snow today, and he wanted you to have this one sat. That's pretty awesome. Thanks, Zorn's son.
The power of Bitcoin Lightning Network. He just sent a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of a penny. I don't know what that's 1/2300th or whatever the sats per dollar is right now. Or that's of $1. So 1, 2, yeah.
I guess Zorn's son gets a real kick out of it every time he sends one sat. I get a kick out of it too, but yeah, that's dope. Oh, I wonder, can we split a sat in half? Is that possible yet?
Don't ask John Carvalho. He'll get angry. Anyway, that doesn't matter. No, not currently.
Yeah.
That I know of.
Yeah, I'm thinking my media, consists of like Twitter. I hate YouTube. One thing that I did that was really positive, and it's funny, I found your show doing this, Shane, because you're probably screwed by the algorithm. Super hard, but I downloaded New Pipe on my graphene phone, and it just like totally eliminates the algorithm, so you pretty much only follow who you subscribe to, and I think the search results are a little bit better. But
I actually haven't heard of that. Is that an F-Droid or what is?
I think it's an F-Droid.
Okay. Look for it.
Yeah, it's like there's no ads. One of the guys in our Telegram group was shilling it.
Cool.
One of our Telegram groups.
That's actually good to know. I just got my first Ghost phone this past week. Our buddy Jamie McConaughey he's doing some stuff. Got the first Pasnia Freedom Box too, but first dark phone I've had. I just haven't had time to do all the tinkering and learning that I need to do to set one up. But I got a Pixel 3a de-googled with Calyx OS on it. So it's not like
Nice.
it's not the most intense security one, but I want to just be able to pick it up and use it. So it's a really badass phone, super user friendly. Really happy with it. Now I'm one step closer. I've had a busted ass iPhone for like 2 years, just waiting for the thing to die, but it won't. It refuses to. So I was like, all right, I got to take matters in my own hands. So I'm transitioning away from my spy phone. Finally, it's been a while. But yeah, I can definitely recommend. Definitely recommend the freedom of Android or F-Droid and Aurora App Store over. I didn't realize. I guess I knew how trapped I was on shitty Apple, but I mean, yeah, the freedom of open source Android operating system is incredible.
I think two things are here. So Calyx or Graphene on Pixel is very, very nice. Gets out all the Google nonsense. And then pairing with, there's a company called Start9 that has a product called an Embassy that's essentially a virtual private cert. I've got one running in a closet, and that can be, everything that a person would use iCloud for, that can be used to replace that and self-host it. And they've got, they're doing, I know I've had the pleasure of meeting the guys that started that, that whole thing, and they're very good people doing some cool stuff.
Yeah. And what's super cool about what they're doing too is like, you could self-host all that stuff if you wanted to run a server. Like you could self-host Nextcloud, you could self-host Matrix, you could self-host, whatever it is. But, for people like me that are a little less ambitious in regards to technology, it's very doable. But,
yeah. And the Start9's made it so, the setup process is 30-45 seconds long. And they literally tested it with like 80-year-old grandmas and stuff like that. They make it very accessible, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. We should get Matt Hill on here. He's a cool dude.
Yeah.
But yeah, kind of what you were talking about, Shane, earlier, as far as like, bumping into anarchists. Like you started in 2015, couldn't find anybody, and then today, you bump into him. I think like just that idea of like the remnant is so powerful, and kind of what you're talking about is like, the quickest way to make anarchists is having an oppressive, awful state. Zorn just started running an embassy. That's dope. But lost my train of thought. But yeah, I mean, it's cool that we can just like sit back and, enjoy it. Like one of the things I think I'm drawn to your work in particular is it's like a very similar mission as us, where we're not trying to get out there and like, make a bunch of money off of our content or, get a big viewer base. We're just trying to, reach out to that remnant and create a network of people and, do similar stuff. And I think that's powerful.
Yeah, definitely. And I've been happy to see, I've been happy to see the like the Bitcoin Citadel thing. It's the exact same thing that we're basically doing with our Second Round Pasnian network, but just a different focus, but a great focus. I like it. And yeah, that's the future. That's the future. I think going back towards the sort of their digital tribalism and tribalism in general. Finding those folks who you want to interact with. I think that's been probably one of the best things for my health over the past couple of years is that I only deal with folks who have forsworn the use of coercion. So, doing trade, I love paying people in Bitcoins. Like I had Max Hillebrand on Vonu a few months back, and he made the terrific point that like when I get paid in Bitcoin, like I know someone values the work that I did for them. Like I know for a fact, because that's going to be worth, when you're in US dollars, whatever, for whatever that matters. But it's like, that's like real valuable. It's not just like handing someone a shitty, Federal Reserve note. Being able to, pay people, for really valuable, products and services, in the second realm, like it's great. There's nothing better.
Yeah,
I'm a huge fan of Max Hillebrand. I like him a lot.
Yeah, those interviews.
Sure.
You've had him on a couple times, and they're fantastic. Really cool dude.
Yeah, Max is incredible. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, Van Nomad over in Europe, working on. I'll mention Wasabi Wall because you were talking about Strike earlier, and I think is like a real positive point, and I'm happy to see him. Happy to see so much focus on in the 2.0, but the Wasabi Wall 2.0 with the coin join is really incredible to see. And I can't remember the other and Taproot. Just there's lots of really great things going on in the open source space and protocol wise. As of late.
Yeah. Should we become I use Samurai, and I have used Wasabi, but I mostly use Samurai now. But should we become the Wasabi podcast just to piss people off?
Caro's got that kind of cover. It's
Should we
I
join
don't
the
know.
team
It's
though?
and the coin join wars. It's just like I don't know. Gets real stupid real quick.
It's
And
so funny.
my basic contention with Samurai is if I was trying to design a business model that would if I was a spook trying to design a business model, I don't think I could beat Samurai. That doesn't mean there's anything malicious or nefarious, but if people, anybody that uses Samurai, just study very, very carefully exactly what data is being shared and how, and just all the different things you can do with that. Like I think, there's certainly ways to use Samurai totally privately, but it is not the default path.
Yeah. So, has Wasabi 2.0 launched?
No, not yet.
Okay.
I don't think so.
2
yet.
weeks.
2 weeks.
But yeah, it looks everything I've seen out of them, and like Francis Pulio is, he's had access to it and has said, has very good things to say about it. So I'm certainly interested to play with it once it's released.
It's got a dope logo.
Mm-hmm. Well, and like one big thing that they have released is that it'll basically it's a 0.3% coin join fee, and then once you pay that, then it's like unlimited remixes after that. And there's looks like a bunch of stuff that again I haven't had a chance to play with yet, but looks like it could be interesting.
Yeah, so that's what Samurai does too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, once you start mixing, you don't continuously pay fees, so that's good. Yeah, the coin mixing super interesting.
I will say one thing I enjoy. Last thing I'll say at Wasabi is so Francis, so Francis is the CEO of a company called Bull Bitcoin up in Canada. They're like about as cypherpunk as you can do an exchange. Like you can only self custody; they don't custody for you. Huge limits on no KYC, all kinds of different stuff. And so huge fan of those guys. And but so he always gets, and they coin join in and out everything with Wasabi. And so like the Samurai people will, Wasabi sucks, it's broken, blah 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 blah. And like one point that he makes often is he'll say, okay, you know that we use Wasabi. We do an incredible volume on there. You've never de-anonymized a single transaction. Why? And it's like the response is always, in my opinion, copy pasting from the people that actually understand Samurai. And it's like those people have really good points. Everybody else is kind of full of it. But
yeah, it's funny, like the intense tribalism that goes into these different segments of Bitcoin. And I think it's inherently a good thing, is my perspective on it, because the more infight, like, and you can't fight collectivism with collectivism. You fight collectivism with individualism, and creating all the infighting plays into that, because why is it impossible for any sort of central authority to co-opt Bitcoin? It's because everybody has different agendas and aspirations and desires of what they want to do with Bitcoin. So it's very difficult to reach consensus to radically change anything on it. But it is very entertaining at the same time, to see it, like people just like slinging mud and not having really thought through it. Is Wasabi 2.0 blue or is it green? Their logo.
I think it's blue.
Good. So red team versus green team wasn't working, so they had to go red team versus blue team. Yeah. So Shane, what are your kind of predictions going forward as far as the next year of the servitile society, and how does that impact people trying to limit coercion in their lives and escape it?
Yeah. So what I would answer with is essentially that the coercion's probably not going to. The coercion is not going to go away. It's not gonna. They're not going to give up all the power that those who falsely imagine themselves rulers have gained over the past couple of years. I mean, I personally speaking, I've been prepping for the reality that, like I mentioned earlier on, like if, someone break your arm on the property, you kind of just factor, not factor in, first realm services into, or products or services into, what I'm doing. So basically, I think, self-sufficiency in all areas will become really important, not just in, food's a first one, but food's not really that hard. In all honesty, I guess, kind of the health and wellness angle, which has been my focus over the past few years. I've got someone in the PASNIA Committee of Correspondence chat putting together a really, like a survival emergency kit, for those sorts of things. And I think it's really just becoming as self-sufficient in as many areas as possible. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. That's what I'm focusing on. And I guess I don't have anything else to add there.
Yeah, the food has definitely been an issue for a little bit. Medical, I mean, it seems like the only answer is we have to start building our own medical system, essentially.
Well, that's speaking, bringing up traditional Chinese medicine again, and some of these other methodologies. Really, it's educating the individual on because that's a big, having to outsource that critical aspect of your life, like your health, to a third party, is very, very dangerous. In my opinion, it has been, for hundreds of years. And it's not a new problem there either with Rockefeller medicine or allopathic medicine. So, yeah, it's yeah, and I think, even beyond that, the something that's more down the road for us is alternative infrastructure. I mean, saw what happened, and might have been manipulated. I mean, most of the stuff it's all centralized and controlled, but like the centralized control grid and all of the I guess the looming threats that have been been around that. I think just independent energy will be huge. And that's more of a medium to long-term goal for the second realm. But I mean, that's a pretty big one. And yeah, it's a pretty big one. Communications, which, I don't think like text messages don't take any data, don't take much to transmit. But so as far as infrastructure for that, it might not be terrible. But yeah, a lot of the conveniences of the first realm are probably going to have to be foregone. If you want to keep your autonomy, or your I guess however you want to look at it, your soul, your spirit. I mean, it's not hard to lose it in the servile society.
Iatrogenic is a forbidden word.
Yeah, iatrogenic disease.
Iatrogenic
treatment. Yep, where the treatment is the cause.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That sort of explains that. Man, I'm so lucky to have a girlfriend that's a acupuncturist.
Yeah, that's valuable for sure.
Yeah. No, I think that. Yeah. I just feel like as I'm talking, my brain's still kind of like stuck half and half in either world, and that's something like I'd like to make a commitment to getting out of and getting into that, because that's the problem with like freedom is like, the majority of people, in the society that we've already seen have, submitted to just the awfulness of it out of convenience and not necessarily coercion. It's just like, this is the easier path. And like, as we go into the world of CBDCs and social credit scores and stuff like that, that's going to be the same, reason why people choose to adopt that versus having to be locked out of the system. So yeah, the individual energy is super interesting because you can live pretty reasonably off of small amounts of electricity with solar panels or water turbines or things like that if you buy like an old tractor battery or forklift battery or something like that, and string a few together. But once you start getting into, like Bitcoin mining or, nicer luxuries of like having a hot tub or a pool or, whatever, it gets a little bit more difficult to do things like that. So
it's also where stranded gas comes in. Like that's something that I hadn't encountered very much prior to, getting into Bitcoin and learning a little bit more about mining. Is that like there's these gas wells all over the place. Like, if you've ever driven through Texas, Oklahoma, Wyoming, all those places and seen a giant torch out in the field, that is gas that could produce a tremendous amount of electricity. And they essentially run it through these generators. And that is something I've thought about is it's like, I think that, down the road, once all this stuff matures so much more, it's like, I think people will buy things like a stranded gas well for the exact same reason that, our parents or grandparents might have bought a bond with like a 5 or 7% coupon. It's like this idea of like, this is a very conservative bet, like very low, when done properly, very low risk. It's off the grid. It's not connected to anything. And it's like a reliable, stable source of income for a very long period of time, where it's like, it's not anything you're going to get rich on overnight, but, just could be, it's like totally outside of the banking system, like something that fulfills a very similar function to what those kinds of financial instruments used to. But it's it's a gas well with a bunch of generators and Bitcoin miners.
I've never even thought about that as an option. Like, you probably just set up an oil rig on your property and extract oil to a certain extent.
Or buy it specifically for that reason. Like this costs X number, 100 million sats for this whole thing, and I expect it to produce, 5 million sats a year in profit. And it's like what I just bought is a financial instrument that gives me very long-term stable income. And because it's like your power is effectively free, that's very good for Bitcoin mining. And that's, just as a way for people to get access to something like that previously came from, some fucking banker or something like that.
Yeah. And I guess that's important.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I guess that's important because, like, I guess the perspective that I've been going from, which is a bad perspective to have as far as kind of like opting out of the system as being entirely 100% self-sufficient. And I think that just limits me so much. And I think I've talked about this before, with like my ambitions to do everything myself and, how important the division of labor is and networking and seeking resources from other people instead of just beating my head against the wall, wasting a bunch of time trying to figure out something when I could just pay a little bit of money to get it done for me. So, yeah.
And I think having people in our local communities that, that run a goat farm, that like, that's their source of income, that run a cow farm, that ranch, all this different kind of stuff, that grow whatever vegetables or whatever. Like, to me personally, it's extremely valuable to have those people in my community. Mm-hmm. And so, which is why, I make a point to shop at the farmer's market, is just because it's like, I want to give them cash directly rather than having Kroger and the government take a cut. And it's like, because I know, like, these are the kinds of, in general, these are the kinds of people that I want to be surrounded by, people that are, way more outside of the system than your typical servile society member, to use that term.
Right. Yeah. And I guess I would say I do like to, at least I'm in this stage right now where I do want to at least know how to, I want to try everything that I might need to do in the future. So like a lot of the stuff I'm doing now is, I'm not outsourcing much. I'll just put it that way. But I do, you talk about a second realm network, like replacing all necessary institutions, upon a different society with a foundation of voluntarism and peace and truth and those sorts of ideas, not the coercion of the first realm. So I mean, division of labor is still an important principle. Like there's people on the network that want to do hemp farming for paper and clothes products. Like I definitely envision like I mentioned the ghost phone. Like Jamin Baconic handles all the tech stuff for Pasnia. I don't have the time or or really the desire even to do all that tinkering. So yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's a place for both. I think it's really with everything is finding that balance that where you're not when you're in a liberated lifestyle and you have that time, it's not really that big of a deal. But still, like you want to balance, you want to make sure it's you balance your time so you enjoy what you're doing, and not just take on 30,000 projects at once and then and then just basically bust your ass all the time. And yeah, work's important, getting stuff done. But like I said, I when I moved here, I intentionally like reduced the amount of stuff that I was taking on to have time to relax and think and things like that. And that used to be a very important part of human life. Sitting by a river and thanking and skipping rocks or whatever the hell, right? Like it used to be a pretty critical part of being human, being in nature and just being there, being present. Yeah, I think that's really. Yeah, it's hard to do in the servile society. Definitely hard to do in the servile society.
Yeah.
I think that's such an important point. And that's like one way that I started practicing that about 4 years ago is like, I really like going for like really long walks. I'm talking like 15 miles, often more than 20 miles, like no phone. Like the only thing I might bring with me, I might bring like a joint or a blunt or something like that. But it's like, if it's either that or nothing, and just like walking around. Like I used to live around Portland. I used to do it all around there. Or like a hike obviously is best, but like, 6, 8, 10 hours of just walking and nothing else that, when I started doing that, it really, really changed a lot for me, for sure.
Yeah. You can't do that in Chacos as much out here.
Why is that? No, I do it in Chacos all the time. I actually try to do as much of it barefoot as possible. I've gotten to where I can, like on a rocky trail, I can hike 3 or 4 miles barefoot before I puss out and need to put shoes on. So
that's impressive.
I'm trying to extend that.
All my experiences with Chacos out here is I get rocks stuck in my shoe and I have to like stop every quarter mile and fish them out.
I don't know.
It's a major.
They might be like falling off your skirt or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I have no idea. It's not just me though. My girlfriend experiences it too, so boots for me. I haven't tried the barefoot thing in the desert. Stepping on a cholla barefoot would be pretty shitty.
That would not be good.
But yeah, we were talking. It's kind of interesting. We were talking about like how Joe Rogan is controlled opposition, as is.
Well, yeah, my thing is just being confused. Like that's my main thing. I don't know where, who's telling him what, but it's very confusing to me to know, I grew up in Texas, like been listening to Alex Jones for a very long time. And to know who Joe Rogan was 20, 30 years ago with Alex Jones, like to square that with, who he is today do you really think the government would hurt us? Like he says these things totally serious. And it's like, they'll bring up this idea that there might be something fishy going on with the vaccine. And it's like, he acts like it's just completely blowing his mind that there could be some intentional aspect to any of this. And I'm like, what? Like I could pull up videos of you yelling about the moon landing being fake. Like,
stop fucking lying! God fucking damn it!
Like, how do you go from that to here? That's I did not have a good answer to that. I've not been able to figure it out.
Well, I mean, the perspective that I have is like these people are statists, and like Tim Pool, you listen to Tim Pool, he complains about the government, and then he says go primary politicians, and that's the solution. Or you listen to Rogan, and it's coming from, using Shane's language, like this perspective of being in the servile society, like that's the perspective, and the solutions are based on that. And so that's where I argue. I don't know if there's somebody. Zorn keeps on sending comments and then deleting them, so that's interesting. But I don't know if there's necessarily somebody sitting, and even Alex Jones too, controlled opposition because he's a fucking statist. Talking about like, we need to get law enforcement more active and, this, that, and the other thing. But I don't know if there's somebody necessarily sitting there like feeding them information, stories to run like Reuters or CNN or, those other groups, but just from the perspective they are, coming from, where they continuously feed people back into the system. That's where I argue they're controlled opposition. So.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. I mean, I've been able to watch. I used to watch Rogan every once in a while when he had interesting guests on, but I've been able to watch him for 3 or 4 years. I mean, I don't know. If you get that big, and it's not to say that he's like completely like he's complicit or anything like that. It's just when you get that big, like you have to make you lose some of your freedom, right? I mean, you've seen what they've done to some presidents and things like. It's not good if you get on their bad side. And when speaking of today, right? It's not really they have no qualms with threatening families and all that stuff. So and that's not to defend him at all. I mean, I had my AJ phase too. But thankfully I had the my start. I mentioned the constitutionalist perspective. Well, my start really started with Bill Cooper, Milton William Cooper back in. He was a radio host in the '90s. Wrote a book called Behold a Pale Horse. So like. I knew of Alex Jones before I heard Alex Jones because I heard Bill calling him a shill. He was lying. Bill went on Alex's show back in 2001, and Alex just lied a bunch about him. So Bill called him out back in those days. And also, I mean, he did a pretty good job of exposing people. I would say there's one that he got wrong, that I can't confirm now, but I mean. It's nothing new, and the opposition is always historically it's always controlled, and it doesn't have to be like holding a gun to the back of someone's head. They've got a different ways of control now, and different ways than what are presented to you in the movies. So, when someone gets that big, I mean, I don't really have any desire. Really don't really have any desire. And you're exactly right to point out that they're just driving the solutions they present are driving people right back into the system. So they're pawns, even if they may talk bad against it occasionally, they're still helping them.
Yeah. The new stuff that they do is they send you over to Epstein's Island and then take a bunch of videos of you.
And +1 for Behold a Pale Horse. I really enjoyed that book. That's a good one to read if anyone hasn't.
I haven't read that one yet.
Yeah, definitely an important one. I've even gone back because I got out of the once I went through. I listened to basically all 2,000 hours of Bill Cooper's radio show, and I was working a moving job like age 20 to 23, and then I found anarchism and solutions, and it's like, well, this stuff doesn't really matter if there's no state for these secret societies to take over. I don't know if that's necessarily the truth now, but I know when 2020 happened, and I heard about you guys probably. I'm sick of hearing about it myself, but like the pre-planning of the so-called health emergency. I went back and dug through a lot of Bill Cooper stuff, and there's a lot of the constitutional humping stuff that I don't really appreciate at this point anymore, but I can still appreciate, being in the 90s and talking about a lot of this stuff, and stuff that I guess it's even further out there than what's more commonly known now. It's definitely incredibly valuable, in my opinion, at least. Or at least there probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 episodes I found valuable of the Hour of the Time that I reposted on the Vonu site. If anyone's interested in any Bill Cooper, sample pieces before going to the very, early 2000 archives of his radio show. It's not podcast friendly, that's for sure.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to check that out on your site.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out too. I enjoyed listening to Ben Stone's stuff, his podcast, because that's not very podcast friendly either.
Yeah, so to be frank, I really hadn't listened to much of Ben's podcast. I read Sedition's version, Sabotage, and then met him at the Motos Peace Liberty Fest one year. and I'd put together that group to do the audiobook. And then a couple MPL fests after that, I went out and hung out at his place for a week or so. But I hadn't really listened to his podcast much at all. You can actually find on the LUA Radio Archives. We did an episode from his living room.
Oh, so cool.
Talking about the importance of building second realms whenever I didn't have a property or any second realm to speak of. Permanent autonomous zones would be the future. I just didn't know how it was going to happen, and got a little push in 2020 to get this shit going, because that's been my biggest complaint. Being an anarchist is great and all, but at the end of 2015, I realized that like there weren't really many people talking about solutions. So that's been like the biggest, like 2020 and all, and 2020, 2021, and this year. I'm positive about this year, but I'm feeling positive about this year. But the last couple of years, I mean, yeah, it's been good. People are moving, ready to organize. So organize in the second realm. It's been good.
One of my favorite episodes that you did was on the no-tell. I thought that was super interesting.
Yeah. That was so there's quite a few episodes now that are just unplanned, and like they're strictly taken from conversations that happened in the Pasadena Committee of Correspondence group. Some of the stuff, like I think I have good ideas sometimes, but some of these, pseudonymous people that have been listening for years have some interesting have some interesting ideas. And yeah, that was a fun episode. That was a fun episode. So I guess I can provide some background. There's a hashtag Agora, a crypto Agorist novella that was published anonymously on the anarplex.net website. There's an example given, fictional example. That's it's a nondescript building. You scan something to get in the door. Then when you're renting your room or whatever, you scan it, pay with Bitcoin or whatever. And it's an anonymous, Airbnb hotel room for the night, the no-tell. So we did an episode on that, talking about the feasibility of that and some of the hurdles and those sorts of things. And so I wish I could recall more details off the top of my head that we talked about, but that was a fun episode for sure.
Yeah, it was like I don't know, those types of kind of underground businesses like that seem very, very, interesting. And you think of, I guess like the popular one that people tend to think of is like speakeasies, and we've kind of seen a resurgence of that over the past year with the lockdown limitations and stuff like that. But that can be essentially implemented anywhere in anything, and like the no-tell of like being able to try. It was funny when you were talking about the silver coins earlier. I was thinking of John Wick, the hotel that they had where they lay the silver coin down. I'm not sure if you've seen that.
I've not.
Okay, so like essentially there's like this criminal underworld, and they have their own currency that they use to exchange for things, and they have a hotel that you only use that currency in, and it's neutral, so you can't kill anybody in it, and it was just, I don't know, that's super interesting. But yeah, I mean that concept is super cool, and we can do so many. Like I just think back to the Silk Road and what Ross Ulbricht did, and how he was just spot on with the stuff that he was thinking about and doing.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, yeah, there are a lot of possibilities, and I guess I should talked a lot about permanent autonomous zones and off-grid homesteading and the like. But there the no-tell being one of them. There are city possibilities for city Vonu and liberated lifestyles. I talked to folks over at they do the Agora podcast, Sec and Penguin, and Sec ran a guerrilla garden in the middle of on a bunch of city blocks back in the day. And Bludgy saw, but they were growing food and they effed off, thankfully. So like there's that possibility. There's a book that we're hopefully going to be publishing over at LUA Publications, republishing. Carl has his community technology, And so, well, I haven't read or listened to it myself. I'm going to. Sek was talking about, or Penguin was, in the 200th Vonu episode, how like he had aquaponics, fish aquaponic systems in basements, like he's using very minimal minimal investment and tools and stuff. So like there's so many possibilities. Regardless, it's just like as we've kind of been talking about I guess at least a little bit ago, is that like you can only you can only act upon the possibilities and the solutions that you see that you see as possibilities, right? If you don't know that they exist, you can't act upon them. And the Servile Society presents like they limit you to very, very few choices, and those few choices basically come down to like as we've been talking about, like convenience and ease, and those force people back into the system. Well, there's a lot of possibilities, whether city or wilderness or perpetual traveling. And Vonu is primarily a nomadic lifestyle. So Rayo was a van nomad for a while, and then he moved out and lived in did wilderness Vonu, and basically camped around the Siskiyou region, Northern California and Southern Oregon. And so that was him. But general nomadic lifestyles, perpetual traveling, kind of the digital nomadism thing is very much enabled by Bitcoin. There's whatever people's situations are, whatever position they find themselves in, there are solutions out there. You just got to start looking. And obviously, if they're listening to your podcast and they're into Bitcoin, they're already probably far down that path. So that's great to see, and great to hear. But there's a lot of endless solutions. As I said before, the only limitation to liberation is your imagination. You just gotta think, and think big. I still my think big, for those who are curious, is I envision like decommissioned aircraft carriers or floating hotels as like floating liberated areas out in international waters. Like it's gonna happen someday. Like I may not be me, but shit, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
Skeef, tell him your prediction about the aircraft carriers.
I was just about to say a bet that I like to make with like people that are like real captured in this kind of status mindset of, if the federal government doesn't allow it, it's not possible, blah, just kind of all that stuff. But anyway, a bet that I like to make with those people to, potentially kind of break them out is I say, what year do you think a nuclear powered aircraft carrier will be sold for Bitcoin? And then tell them that my bet is sometime between 2028 and 2032. And with the implication being, by then, the US federal government will be so hard up for funds that they're just scrounging because nobody wants their money anymore. And so and again, I don't know if that's the time frame or if it's 50 years later or next week, and it's probably not next week. But just the idea of like, there will come a day when the money's been so debased that nobody wants it anymore, and that they can print all the money they want and it won't get them what they actually, are what these people in power are actually trying to get. And so they'll have to resort to selling resources for Bitcoin to raise money, like, so that they actually have some funds, and that'll be part of their death spiral. Yeah. But I don't know, it's fun. I try to think of things like real quick questions or bets or like something that can just get, like think of somebody who's been a boomer and has totally been voted Republican, all this kind of stuff, and like to get them to realize, oh, there's I might disagree, but there's at least a perspective out there that we don't need and won't have a federal government someday, and then obviously, they probably won't go all the way down the road to anarchism, but just, I don't know, get them to think about it a little bit.
Zorn.
Yeah, no. So you guys have heard, you've obviously heard of like, the temporary autonomous zone raves where like they announce the address the last minute, and then people go and do their drugs and have their party. And the next weekend it's at a different place. Well, like I envision like, again, like and maybe, I dream big, forgive me for dreaming big, but like I envision like the macro version of that being like, this, I don't know, the Tasnia aircraft carrier, puts out its notice to, the over the network that it's going to be parked in the KSAL Bank, and all the boats come out there for the the trade and the gathering, and maybe the what would be illegal medical services could be issued there. I mean, the possibilities are endless, and I can see that happening, and we're already kind of seeing things go in that direction. I don't think it's that crazy. Might just be 20, 30 years down the road, but still.
Yeah, that's not that long.
Yeah.
Zorn predicts
no.
The USS Ford is 13.3 billion USD or 0.5 Bitcoin.
So 50 million sats is Zorn's price prediction for an aircraft carrier.
That's pretty optimistic.
Well, unless you get, I've seen a couple over the past few years. One might have been even 2019 or 2020, but then I found another one 2017. Someone asked how much it would cost for a decommissioned aircraft carrier, and I was like, well, I've seen them for sale before. Let me go find out. Well, there was one where it was obviously a fascist deal, but they sold an old decommissioned, worn down aircraft carrier for like $1 to some private company so they could scrap it. And then there was another one that wasn't that much. Like, it's really like talking, like low millions. Like I don't remember exactly, but like think 3 or 4 million or something like that. The floating hotel is 8 million. The one I saw a few years back, but I mean, it's really like you talk about like Bitcoin, moons very soon. And again, price doesn't matter, but like this is like a voluntary redistribution of wealth. So like there are going to be some rich folks in our networks that'll have private jets and have decommissioned aircraft carrier. Maybe you know what I mean. Like there'll be some rich folks in our in the Bitcoin liberation arena. So I think the possibilities are really endless.
I got the money.
Yeah. Another one we talk about is Bitcoiners don't shop for Citadels on Zillow. They shop on like these like government auction websites when they start auctioning off secret underground bases and things like that. It's like just to kind of get people to think a little bit bigger. It's like we're all about the fall of the American empire, not one more McMansion that there's 27 million of.
I need to get back on those government auction sites. They've got some interesting stuff on there. Like they were always selling like old Hummers and things like that.
Yeah.
Then
if you're a good diesel mechanic, you can get a sweet deal on a Hummer on there. Even if you're not, they're not terribly expensive.
I don't even think you have to be a decent mechanic on cars like those because the engine blocks are so big and they sit so high. You can pretty much do everything without having a tremendous amount of, need a lift. And I mean, maybe to lift the engine out you do, but it lowers the cost tremendously. Yeah. I've been wanting a truck because it's hard to be self-sufficient with the Honda Civic. So
biodiesel is a rabbit hole I went down a while ago. That's always been, I've like kicked around like if I was ever going to start a side hobby business or something like that, it'd be one of those like vegetable collection agencies, or not agencies, but like companies like vegetable oil. Like go around to all the restaurants and take their vegetable oil and then you can turn it into biodiesel to run all your shit. Because you can, I can't imagine it would work for mining Bitcoin, but that a diesel generator running on biodiesel or just running straight on vegetable oil would be a pretty reliable source of a tremendous amount of power.
Yeah. Maybe we could start a meme where we find a way to use grapeseed oil to run it.
Yeah.
That'd be a proper use of grapeseed oil instead of ingesting it.
Yeah.
Maybe we could partner with Texas Slim to do that. But yeah. All right, we're about 2 hours in. Trying to think of things I've got to shill this week. So Santos is doing a meetup tomorrow up in Phoenix. I unfortunately won't be able to make it because I'm feeling like crap. But he's doing a presentation on Lightning for everyone, which will be pretty cool. That guy's working on some pretty dope stuff that he'll be announcing here pretty soon. I'm pretty excited. Good anarchist to support for sure. And then I'm doing a presentation on home mining on Saturday, which I'm really excited about. And we have an S9 giveaway So if you show up, you have a chance to take a miner home and get it set up that day. So I'm pretty excited about that. Yeah, we gotta. I'm just so over these intermediaries in Bitcoin. Like we can route around the exchanges and we can route around the surveillance, and home mining is a great option to do that. Also working on getting Azteco terminal set up. We are launching through the Arizona Bitcoin Network. We're launching the Satoshi Chamber of Commerce and the School of Nakamoto to both try and on-ramp businesses and to accepting Bitcoin and selling Bitcoin through Azteco, and then also teach people about these, good practices. So we're going to be pretty active in our community, getting businesses onboarded, as well as like teaching people more in depth outside of the meetups, which I'm really, really excited about this year. So if you're in Arizona and you're not plugged into what we're doing, have fun staying poor. But yeah.
And I was going to say one more, like Bitcoin miner, we've talked about this on here before, but it's like Bitcoin miners that have electric bills that they need to pay in dollars are a fantastic source of KYC free sats.
Yeah.
So if you can connect with, and that's something I'm optimistic about, is more and more of us move more of our income onto, to mining and different things like that are Bitcoin exclusive. At least for the foreseeable future, there will be a need for dollars periodically. And so that's fantastic. It's like go to a meetup, one person brings cash, the other person brings Bitcoin, and everybody goes home happy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's solid. And that, I don't think there should be any excuse for going to a meetup and not being able to buy Bitcoin from somebody there. I think that needs to be a common occurrence. But yeah. Shane, you got anything to shell?
I guess I'll just say, for anyone interested in learning more about joining the Paznia Second Realm Network, check out the website. I've got the 2021-2022 stakeholder bulletin. It goes into, we've got kind of three stage vision. First year was food self-sufficiency. This coming years is more building out the network and getting the digital second realm set up, like the Paznia Freedom Boxes, the digital seed exchanges, hopefully like a form of a decentralized transportation and logistics network. The Paznia Department of Transportation, as I mentioned earlier. But yeah, can learn about all that and how to get involved. Paznia.com, PAZNIA.com. And yeah, if you found any of the self-liberation talk interesting, I do the Vonu podcast. We're at vonupodcast.com. And I always do recommend, just because it's a branch of, a branch of libertarian thought per se, but Vonu is a pretty unique philosophy and does certainly, practice action. So I do recommend people start back at season 1. We'll take you a little bit of time to get through, but that's what a lot of people say they do, and that's what I think that's where you're going to get the most value. But of course, you can always just go to the podcast feed and listen to whatever suits your fancy. Yeah, I guess the last thing, libertarian type publications, if you're looking for strategy guides, second round book on strategy, hashtag Agora, really good crypto anarchist fiction like Brushfire. Lots of good stuff over there on libertyunderattack.com. Yeah, with that, guys, I definitely appreciate the conversation. It's the first live stream I've done in a while. I stopped trying to do them. So I'd work about 50% of the time at the homestead, but I got better internet now, so maybe I'll try to start doing them again. But I started with live radio, so I always appreciate the live format. And I appreciate what you guys are doing too, especially getting people using Bitcoin in physical space and time, getting people together. That's incredible. And I'm definitely going to need to catch up on your guys' podcast. So I can already tell I could learn a lot in the Bitcoin realm from you guys. So and maybe even get you on Vonu at some point if you guys would be interested.
Oh yeah, that'd be fun. Shane Zorn just sent me 2 sats to share with you. So if you wanted to message me a lightning invoice for 2 sats, I can send it over. But
sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say I really appreciate you taking the time to share your perspective. And I'm really, really thankful that people that listen to this got an intro to that and hopefully dig into the podcast and everything like that. Like I know I definitely will be doing some more of for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I just got to say,
cheers, man.
The podcast and the work that you're doing is such a breath of fresh air. Like exiting like the status narrative just feels so good. It feels good to have other options than, you know, these cucks like Rogan and Tim Pool and, you know, whoever else. And to be actually challenged, and instead of just like sitting here and just like consuming like, yeah, the government sucks, the government sucks, the government sucks. It's like, this is how you limit coercion in your life and actually do something productive with your time instead of just, you know, sitting around and whining. As far as your publishing company, I think you do something. You can download the content that you buy and actually own it, correct?
So yeah, everything that we put out is available for free online. All the books except for a couple that we did for clients. They might have copies out, PDF copies out themselves, but everything we put out is available for free. I only started it because I was publishing my book and went through the whole process and figured I could help other people do it here in the in the liberation community. But yeah, everything's available for free. The other driving force was I found all these 1960s and 70s Vonu zines that Rayo put out, like Innovator, the Vonu Life, which is an incredible. These folks were hardcore self-liberators back in like 1970s, early 1970s. So I've been digitizing those and putting them out, and I figured I'd put them out in paperback format too, and that entails most of what we put out at LA Publications, but there's still a lot of unique authors that are putting out stuff now. So yeah.
Nice. I see you have a book called Government, the Biggest Scam in History, or something. Do you think the government's a bigger scam than Ethereum?
Cool. That's close, huh?
For what it's worth, I would say yes. I think the government's the biggest scam in the history of humanity.
Yeah, for sure.
I would say yes too. Well, cool, man. Thanks for coming on. Big shout out and thank you to the people in chat and on the Twitter Spaces. Hobo didn't get any bong rips tonight. Bummer. He's been in here though. We didn't get into any conspiracy theories. You got any favorite conspiracy theories to Shane, what's your website again?
So there's vonupod.com and pasnia.com for Pasnia and the podcast. I'm not sure which one, or libertarianattack.com for the books.
I'm gonna
put too many websites.
No, I'll put them in the chat. I was just looking at libertyunderattack.com. Pasnia is for like the Pasnia network, and then Vonu is the Vonu podcast. Cool. Well, I'm going to end this stream.